When I say 5 cheap tablets that avoid the common budget mistakes, I'm not talking about tablets that magically compete with $900 iPad Pros. I'm talking about the stuff that normally ruins budget tablets: laggy multitasking, dim displays, fake spec sheets, weak battery life, cheap plastic builds, and software that feels abandoned after 1 year. These 5 don't eliminate compromise, but they fix the right problems. Let's start with the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. This tablet fixes one of the biggest budget mistakes: inconsistency. A lot of cheap tablets look fine when you first power them on. Then you install apps, open a few browser tabs, and suddenly it feels like it's gasping for air. The Tab S6 Lite doesn't try to wow you with crazy benchmark numbers. Instead, Samsung tuned it for stability. The Exynos chip inside isn't flashy, but it's optimized well enough that normal people doing normal things won't feel constant friction. I've used it for long browsing sessions, streaming YouTube while answering emails, even light document editing. It doesn't randomly reload apps every time you switch. That alone separates it from the $200 crowd. And then there's the S Pen, included, not sold separately. That matters. Most budget tablets either don't support a stylus or make you buy a mediocre one later. Here, you open the box and it's there. And it's not some laggy stick. Palm rejection works properly, handwriting in Samsung Notes feels responsive, annotating PDFs doesn't feel like you're fighting the screen. The 10.4-inch 2000 by 1200 2048 display is another place where Samsung avoided the cheap panel mistake. It's not AMOLED, but it's evenly lit, colors are natural, and it's sharp enough that text doesn't look fuzzy. A lot of cheaper tablets cut corners here with dull, washed-out panels. This doesn't. Pricing usually floats in the $250 to $320 range now, depending on storage and sales. At that price, getting a metal build, reliable software, included stylus, and Samsung's update support makes it feel way more thought out than most budget tablets that just throw specs at you. Next is the Lenovo Tab P12. This one fixes another common mistake: cramped screens and fake productivity promises. So many affordable tablets market themselves as great for work, but then give you an 1.10" panel that feels tiny the second you open a spreadsheet. The Tab P12 has a massive 12.7-inch display, and that size genuinely changes how it feels to use. Reading long articles doesn't require constant zooming. Watching Netflix feels immersive instead of boxed in. Even basic multitasking feels more natural because you're not squeezing everything into a small window. The Dimensity 7050 chip paired with 8 GB RAM is smartly chosen. Lenovo didn't cheap out on memory. That's important because low RAM is what usually causes that frustrating reload cycle on budget tablets. Here, I can leave multiple tabs open, switch between apps, and not feel the system constantly clearing itself. Battery life consistently hits around 10 to 12 hours for me in mixed use, and importantly, it doesn't get uncomfortably hot under moderate load, which is something I've seen happen on cheaper tablets that use weak chips pushed too hard. Pricing typically sits around $300 to $380, depending on configuration. For that money, you're basically getting a near laptop-sized display and stable everyday performance without stepping into premium pricing. It fixes the too small and underpowered budget problem. Now let's talk about the Xiaomi Pad 6, because this one fixes the display mistake aggressively. Budget tablets almost always stick to 60 Hz panels with mediocre brightness. Xiaomi didn't. You get an 11-inch 2880 by 1800 display with 144 Hz refresh rate. That's not marketing fluff. The smoothness is noticeable immediately. Scrolling through long web pages feels fluid. App animations feel clean. Even just swiping around feels premium. And instead of using a weak entry-level chip, Xiaomi went with the Snapdragon 870, older flagship processor. That was a smart move. It's powerful enough to handle multitasking without choking, but affordable enough to keep the tablet in the mid-$300 price range. You can run multiple apps, stream video, browse heavily, and it stays smooth. It doesn't randomly stutter when notifications come in. It doesn't freeze when you join a video call. That reliability matters more than benchmark bragging rights. Build quality is solid too. Aluminum back, slim profile. It doesn't creak or flex like some cheaper plastic models. Pricing usually falls between $320 to $400 depending on RAM and storage. For that money, you're getting one of the best displays in this entire price bracket. It fixes the cheap screen equals cheap experience problem completely. Now let's talk about the iPad 10th generation. The mistake this one fixes is longevity and optimization. A lot of Android tablets under $400 run fine at launch and then slowly degrade with updates or lack of support. Apple doesn't play that game. The A14 Bionic inside is still extremely capable for everyday tasks. App switching is smooth, browsing is consistent, even light photo editing feels snappy. You don't get those micro stutters that sometimes show up on mid-range Android tablets. The 10.9-inch Liquid Retina display isn't laminated, yes, but in practical use, text looks crisp and colors are accurate. It's bright enough for indoor and moderate outdoor use. Most non-enthusiasts won't even know what lamination means, they'll just notice it looks good. Battery life easily clears a full day of normal use, and more importantly, this tablet will likely receive software updates for years. That's huge. You're not replacing it in 2 years because apps stop supporting your OS. Pricing has dropped a lot since launch. During sales, it dips into the $349 to $399 range. That puts it directly against higher-end Android tablets. When you factor in long-term updates and resale value, it's actually one of the safest cheap tablet buys if you want something that won't age badly. Finally, the OnePlus Pad. This one fixes the budget tablet feels slow even when it shouldn't issue. The Dimensity 9000 class chip inside is legitimately powerful for this category. Pair that with 8 GB or 12 GB RAM and you get real multitasking headroom. You can jump between YouTube, Chrome, Gmail, and messaging apps without the device feeling stressed. Background audio doesn't cut out. Apps don't constantly reload. That's the stuff that makes or breaks a daily use tablet. The 11.61-inch 144 Hz display with the 7:5 aspect ratio is also more practical than people realize. That taller shape gives you more vertical room for reading and browsing. It feels less cramped than traditional widescreen tablets when you're doing productivity tasks. Battery life is strong, and the fast charging is legitimately fast, which fixes another budget frustration, waiting forever to top up. Pricing usually sits between $399 and $449, depending on configuration and sales. It's slightly higher than the others, but you're paying for noticeably smoother performance and a more premium feel. It avoids the classic cheap tablet that feels cheap every time you touch it trap. Here's the honest bottom line. Most cheap tablets fail because they cut corners in the wrong places. Weak processors with too little RAM, low-quality displays, poor software support, and inconsistent performance. These 5 avoid those traps in different ways. One fixes stylus integration. One fixes screen size and multitasking. One fixes display smoothness. One fixes long-term software reliability. And one fixes raw responsiveness. None of them are perfect, but they don't make the common budget mistakes, and that's what actually matters when you're spending $300 to $400 instead of $900.